It's time for the Olympics of Motocross. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This isn't the off-road update, this is a breakdown on the 2024 Monster Energy Motocross of Nations. The rider list has finally come out. The race takes place next weekend, October 5th and 6th at Matterley Basin in the UK. Exciting for me. I will be going over there. It'll be my first trip over to an international Motocross of Nations. But what this video is going to be, we're going to take a look at the rider list that officially dropped earlier this morning at the time of this recording. We're going to go through, we're going to break down not all of the teams, but a lot of them, and hit on the key players and what's been going on in their respective series throughout the year. So let's get started. And this is in the order in which the teams finished at last year's Motocross of Nations. Carrying the number 1, 2, and 3 is France, Romain Febvre in the MXGP class, Tom Vial in MX2, and Maxime Renault in the MX Open class. France, no matter what, brings it for this event. Good, bad, ugly, injuries, everything. They show up for this race when it counts. Gauthier Paulin at the end of his career, he wasn't winning MXGP races anymore, but when he was still part of this team, he stepped up for the Motocross of Nations. This year looks a little bit different. Romain Febvre had a great run in the MXGPs this year. The final race is going on right now this weekend. The qualifying race happened earlier today, and the final motos are tomorrow, and they will decide the championship in the MXGP and the MX2 classes. But Romain Febvre with a solid season, probably one of his best in a few years. He's going to be strong. I don't know if he's going to get a moto win, but definitely he could fight for a top 3 in a moto in that MXGP class. Absolutely. Tom Vial, with everything that's gone on in the MXGP series this year with the Frenchman in the MX2 class, hasn't really been a great year for French riders, so that's why they're leaning on Tom Vial, from over here in the United States in the MX2 class for France. And then the wild card for this one, possibly the weak link, Maxime Renault. Renault missed a lot of time this year in the MXGP World Championships with injury. He's been back for the last handful of races or so, but he's the wild card. Now, having said that, if anybody was at Red Bud a couple years ago, he ran really strong there along with Dylan Ferrandis, and anything could happen. Anything can and does usually happen at this race. So Renault's definitely not one to overlook. He's the weak link on paper coming into this race, but you can't count out Renault, and he's going to be fast, and he is very good on hard pack soil. Second from last year with numbers 4, 5, and 6, Jet Lawrence, Kyle Webster, and Hunter Lawrence. All right, if you haven't been paying attention or if you live under a rock, you know what the Lawrence brothers have done this year over in the United States. And then Kyle Webster, he's the unknown, especially with throwing him on the 250. There were rumors circulating around that there was going to be a possible Hunter on a 250 just because we know he's good on a 250, especially outdoors. He showed at Red Bud in 2018 that he's good on a 250 in the outdoors. He won the 250 Motocross Championship last year. That was a strong possibility from what I've been told, from what I've heard, but they ultimately went with Webster. Webster came over here for a handful of races during the summer. He raced the 450 class. He had good finishes. So we know Jet's going to be strong. We know Hunter's going to be strong. Webster, like I said, is the unknown, especially since he's on a 250, but in the Australian Championships, he is very strong across the board. So Australia may not be the strongest team, may not be the number 1 ranked team going into Matterley Basin next weekend, but they're definitely, even with Webster as an unknown more or less, is definitely a top 3. They are a podium contender at Matterley Basin next weekend. Numbers 7, 8, and 9, Italy, Mattia Guadagnini, Andrea Adamo, and Andrea Bonacorsi. This one is it's definitely not the strongest Italian team that they fielded. And, you go on, if you call what a strong team is, you would think Antonio Caroli, Alessandro Lupino, that's not these guys. Andrea Adamo in the MX2 class, he's the defending world champion. He is not going to be world champion this year in the MX2 class. Not the season that he wanted, but he's still strong. I look for him to be a 7 to 8 guy, even with the MXGP and the MX Open riders. I think Adamo usually comes on strong later in the races, which, last year it was a little bit different. He was more up towards the front. This year he's been in that 3 to 6 range most of the time. And, just hasn't been the season like he had last year when he won the World Championship. As far as Mattia Guadagnini, he ran strong a couple of years ago, and he's run strong in the past. He was off injured for a good part of this season. He's still young. Guadagnini is only 20, maybe 21 years old, I think. I could be wrong about that. He's still young, but he has been in the MXGP class. This is his second year, I believe, in the MXGP class. Not the strongest. If he can get a start, though, he can run. Most of the time this year in the MXGP championships, he hasn't gotten the start, so his finishes haven't been well. However, when he has gotten the start, he's been able to run with those guys. He hasn't been able to stay with those guys the entire 35 minutes, but he's had the pace. Fitness, a little bit of a question, but Guadagnini is kind of the unknown here. And then Andrea Bonacorsi, MX2 rider for the Monster Energy Yamaha team. He's hit and miss as well. I like them putting him in the MX Open class just because he's one of those taller guys. It seems like he would fit a 450 really well with his riding style. And like I said, he's been hit and miss in the MX2 class in the World Championships this year. But definitely, Italy is definitely a solid top 5 team, in my opinion, with that lineup that they have with Guadagnini, Adamo, and Bonacorsi. Numbers 10, 11, and 12, Germany, Ken Roczen, Simon Langenfelder, and Max Nagel. This isn't the strongest German team as far as speed goes, but as far as consistency goes, I like this team. We all know Ken's strong. He's going to get stronger. Everyone's kind of putting that Ironman 250 race kind of as the bench point. I don't think that's necessarily fair to him. Yeah, he got the knee and the leg injury in Nashville. I was there for that. I saw it. It was unfortunate. He was off a lot longer than he thought it was going to be. And then that 250 race maybe didn't go exactly as he wanted it to, but he hadn't hardly been on a bike. He was out of shape in the grand scheme of things, for fighting for, a podium position for 35 minutes in the 250 class with that talent field that we had this year. But Kenny's back on the 450. He's had Motocross of Nations experience before. He's won races at Motocross of Nations on a 250. Kenny's strong. Langenfelder, he's won motos this year in the MX2 World Championships. I wish he would have shown a little bit more consistency, or else I would have Germany a little bit higher up on this list than where I have him. I didn't write down a ranked list of all the countries, but Langenfelder, he gets off to a start. He's strong. He can run he's been beating Adamo. Langenfelder's there in that MX2 World Championship category. He's not going to win the title this year, but he's in that category. Langenfelder is one of those guys that I'm going to be looking as a dark horse to be the top guy in that MX2 class when everything is said and done. And then relying heavily on experience and consistency, Max Nagel. I love seeing Max back. I was a fan of his when he was still doing the World Championships a handful of years or so ago, and I like that they're bringing him back. Nagel has the experience. He has the consistency. That experience and that level of maturity from Nagel and from Roczen is going to elevate Germany's chances of being on the podium this year. I do have a feeling if anything should go wrong with the countries that are going to stack up ahead of them on paper, the experience of Roczen and Nagel is going to provide that consistency and move them up in the rankings. I have a feeling as long as Langenfelder holds out well in the MX2 class. Belgium, 13, 14, and 15, Lucas Koenen, Sascha Koenen, Jago Geerts. A very young team, a very inexperienced Motocross of Nations team across the board. Jago, I'm looking for him to be in that top 5 overall, in each moto, in the MX2 and MX Open moto, and the MXGP and MX Open moto. Jago's going to run the MX Open class. He missed a lot of the year with injury, but if anyone remembers from 2 years ago at Redbud, Jago did very well. He won the MX Open qualifying race, or the MXGP qualifying race, I believe is in the first race. Jago can ride a 450. For as small as he is, he's a 450 rider. And even with the time off this year, as long as he is in shape, he's going to be in that top 5 overall moto classification when you combine the classes. Really looking forward to see how he's able to bounce back after all the injuries and all the time off that he's missed. The unknown here are the Koenen brothers, Lucas and Sascha. Lucas is still technically, mathematically in play for the MX2 World Championship that'll wrap up tomorrow against his teammate KWolfe. I like that they're putting him on the 450. He's a taller rider, just, even though he and his brother Sasha are twins, Lucas is the taller rider, and he's shown the consistency this year. He's had multiple Grand Prix victories. He's had multiple overall victories this year. He's shown that once he moves up to the big bike here in a couple of years, he's going to be a threat for that MXGP World Championship, and he's definitely going to be a podium contender if he's not at the top of the point standings. Sasha, he needs to prove something here. I know it's a one-off race, but Sasha kind of needs to prove something to himself and everybody else. He's the whole shot master this year in the MX2 class, but then whether it's him overriding or it's just, lack of experience, lack of maturity, whatever the case is, he crashes a lot. He's thrown away races. He's won races this year. Don't get me wrong. He has won races this year. And, he needs to show that maturity and that consistency, despite the fact that he's only 18 years old. He needs to, kind of up his game a little bit and show that he can at least last the race without throwing it away, or else Belgium is going to be in a deep hole. And the fact that they're on a replacement situation because of the injury to Liam Everts from a few weeks ago, I'm glad Liam is doing okay. I'm glad he's got feeling back. If anybody saw that crash, it was, you didn't really see much of the crash, but the way he landed, it was not good. He lost feeling for a few days. It's come back to him. He's going to be in rehab, but I'm glad that he is on the mend and he's going to be able to race again. But that was a scary situation. But because of the injury to Everts, that is why we're at this team right now with a replacement of Yago, despite the injury. So that's why we're at this situation right now with Team Belgium. Switzerland, 16, 17, 18, Jeremy Seewer, Arnaud Tonis, Valentin Guillot. This is probably the longest standing full team at the Motocross of Nations as far as riders go that have all raced together on a team for as many years as they have. This is a solid team. Seewer shown great speed this year in the MXGPs on that Cowie. He's moving over to Ducati next year. That announcement has already been made, but Seewer can definitely be in that top 3, top 5 conversation in the MXGP class. Not just in the class, but in the motos as well, with the MXGP and MX2, as well as the MXGP and MX Open. Jeremy's shown great speed this year, despite not having, not really liking that Cowie as much, but Seewer's there. Tonis dropping back to a 250. He ran the MXGP class in the World Championships this year at some of the races, didn't have the greatest runs. I'm interested to see how he will adapt back on a 250, and he's been out of the scene for a little bit. He didn't have the greatest run of races when he was over here in the United States years ago. And, unfortunately, it just didn't work out for him. And I like Arnaud. He's a good dude, hard worker, great rider. Switzerland is not coming in with the strongest team. I don't know what really other options they are working with, if they have any better options as far as this team. And then Valentin Guillot on that Honda, he's had flashes of speed. Results haven't been there. So he's going to be I think he's going to be a solid second guy. Maybe he's the weak link. And, it's all based on around Tonis in that MX2 class. It's just kind of hard to pinpoint where he's going to be since he's been running the 450 when he's been racing here in the last few years. Spain, 19, 20, and 21, Jorge Prado, Oriol Oliver, and Ruben Fernandez. Prado, if everything goes right tomorrow, he's going to be your world champion once again, which 2 weeks ago we did not think that was possible. Tim Geiser had a phenomenal lead, not insurmountable, but a very healthy points lead, and it all went away. Prado is back in championship contention after I believe it was a shoulder injury at the beginning to midway part of the year that really put him back in the points. Geiser's had the points lead ever since, but now Prado is back with the red plate, and if he holds on strong tomorrow, he'll be the world champion once again, back-to-back in that MXGP class. He's going to be in that conversation. That MXGP class is probably going to be the most loaded class we've had in a while as far as talent across the board with the credentials that everybody has, and it's going to be really exciting to watch. Oriol Oliver, he can get starts in that MX2 class in the World Championships, but his results just haven't been there. But Spain doesn't have another MX2 rider to really fall back on that's going to provide any better results than Oriol Oliver. So, he's the one that's everyone's going to have to watch. And then the MX Open class, Ruben Fernandez, he missed a lot of the season with injury. He came back. He's been showing great speed. I don't think the fitness is there, but the speed is definitely there. he's had good finishes. I think if he would have been healthy this year, he would have been in that conversation to, really mix it up with Prado, Geiser, Hurlings, Guillaume, or Seaward, I should say, and really mix it up in that MXGP World Championship conversation. But nonetheless, Prado, Oliveira, and Fernandez is your team for Spain. Moving on to the United States, 22, 23, 24, Eli Tomac, Cooper Webb, Aaron Plessinger. I like our chances better now with Tomac coming in and with Webb being on the 250. There's so much, speculation, if you want to call it, but there's so much talk based around Hayden Deegan not racing. And it's not even so much, if it's the wrist or, hand, whatever it is. Okay. I just wish there would have been a little bit more clear and, transparency from the Deegan camp and say, hey, we're not getting anything for this race. I'm looking at next year's Monster Energy Supercross season. I want to get my hand and my wrist healthy for that. If I prolong this another few weeks, that's going to make it really difficult. If I need to run west for any reason, but pushing it back into the east would be the more likely scenario. But if Star wants to race him on the West Coast, then, he needs this extra couple of weeks to get the surgery, get the hardware and everything removed, and get him on the mend before we head to Anaheim in January, if that's what ends up happening. But as far as the team goes, Eli Tomac, and he has been showing such strong rides ever since he's come back from that thumb injury. And, there was all that, Tomac versus Plessinger. With the injury to Chase Sexton, I like where we are. Tomac's been riding strong. Aaron is still riding strong. So our chances going into this race have, I would say, gone up exponentially with this lineup. Cooper Webb raising his hand to answering the call to race the MX2 class. The last time Cooper raced the 250, the MXGP race in Charlotte back in 2016, I was there for that one. It was a great ride. He came from behind, caught and passed Jeffrey Hurlings, and took off and won the race. And it was a phenomenal moment in racing history. And for him to do it in front of his hometown crowd was awesome. And, the United States fan base. And for him, he's got 3 weeks to get ready on this 250. But you put Cooper against, you put his back up against the wall, he's going to make things happen. So I'd look for him if he can get that 250 dialed in by the time they head to the UK next week. They're going to be in good shape, definitely in that podium contention. And if they can show consistency, then they're going to mix right in there for the win, for the first couple of spots, and hoist that Chamberlain trophy possibly. And then Aaron Plessinger. Aaron has been such a strong force this year on that KTM. He finally won his first Supercross. He was third in the outdoor championships this year. Aaron's riding better than I've seen him ride in a long time, and his confidence has got to be high right now. And he wants redemption for 2018 at Redbud. He was the newly crowned 250 outdoor champion that year, and Redbud just did not go his way, and he's been chomping at the bit to get his crack at, redeeming himself for that, ride that he had, and the crashes and everything else. And he's hungry this year, and I think he's riding better than he has in a long time. And I'm really interested to see how he mixes it up, especially in that final moto, the MXGP and the MX Open moto, with the Lawrence brothers, with Prado, with Geiser, with Hurlings. I'm really interested to see how he's going to stack up with all those guys with the way he's been riding. Slovenia, 25, 26, 27, Tim Geiser, Jaka Peklaj, and Jan Panzer. They're going to make it into the A final with this lineup. I don't see them, cracking into the top 5. I've got them with this lineup probably an 8 pick at best in the standings. Geiser, he's about to lose out on the World Championship, possibly, just with everything, but he's the strongest rider they have. Panzer is he's run the World Championships before, he's run the Motocross of Nations before, but he's not at the speed. Slovenia always has a problem. Their rider base isn't deep. They always have a problem fielding a team that can actually qualify into the A final on Sunday. But I feel like with this team, unless something happens to Peklaj, I've never heard of him before. So unless something happens to him, Slovenia ought to be into the final, but I got them at probably an 8 spot at best in the final standings. The home nation team, Great Britain, 28, 29, 30, Tommy Searle, Max Anstie, Conrad Muse. This is a team, essentially of the old dogs. I mean, Conrad Muse is the youngest guy in this team, but Tommy Searle coming back, he'll be strong if he's been riding. I think he's been riding. Well, he's been riding. He ran the Vet the Nations or the Vintage the Nations, whichever event it was, at Farley Castle a few weeks ago, or Donington, whichever race that was, and won it. You know, he battled Heath Harrison, Mike Brown, Ryan Villapoto, and he was strong. Great Britain won that event. And Tommy's going to be strong. Anstey is going to be riding the 250. He's going to be on a Star Yamaha, so look for him to get a good start. If any of these teams start switching around riders and giving the 250 guys the inside positions on the gate, look for Max to pull a start. I know he didn't pull great starts on that Star bike, you know, during the outdoors this year. Not a lot of them anyway. Not as many as maybe we thought he would have. But just look for him with that motor package that they have to get a halfway decent start to give Great Britain a good shot at a strong result from that MX2 class with him in both of those motos. And then Conrad Muse, I would say he's the weak link on that team. He has won the British Championship the last couple of years. But, you know, he was one of those can't miss kids coming out of Europe, and it just didn't work out for him. You know, he had the Husky ride, he had the Suzuki ride, and it just did not work out for him. But like I said, he's been strong in the British Championships the last few years. Conrad, you know, if he can pull together a start, he might mix it up there. But I see him as the weak link on this team. And it's nothing personal, just on paper, this is where we end up with Tommy Searle, Max Anstey, and Conrad Muse heading into Motocross of Nations for Great Britain. Estonia, 31, 32, 33, Gert Krestenhoff, Tano Leok, and Harry Kulas. This is the same thing, you know, as far as the team longevity as the Swiss team with these guys. These guys have all done it, and they've all done it together. I'm interested to see how Leok does on a 250. I haven't seen him ride a 250 probably in this decade, or maybe even the previous decade. It's been a long time, but I think this is going to be Leok's 20-something Motocross of Nations. And Tunnel's just a good dude. Like, I like watching him ride. He's just a good dude. And it's been weird not having him at the Motocross World Championships the last several years. But, you know, he's definitely a great dude. Gert Krestenhoff, he came over here this year, ran a few races, showed strong performances, strong qualifying times. He's going to be a solid pick. Harry Kulas, he got 10th by the time everything was said and done in the Super Motocross World Championships. I don't know if he's having to buy a bike once he gets over to the UK, like he had to do over here multiple times. But with Estonia, I see them as a solid top 10 team with this lineup. They've got tons of experience, probably more experience than anybody else in this field. You know, they're the old guards in this one, but they've got experience on their sides and they know the game. They know how to play this race. So I look for Estonia. They were 11th last year. I look for them to definitely move up into the top 10 as long as everything goes right for them. Probably, you know, if everything really falls right for them and, you know, misfortune of other, you know, nations, maybe a 6-7 spot for the team out of Estonia. We'll move on a few teams to New Zealand. 40, 41, 42, Hamish Harwood, Brody Connolly, and Josiah Natsky. Natsky's been running the Canadian Championships the last few years. You know, he's done well. He's won motos in the Canadian Championship, so look for him to mix it up with the Canadian team as far as the results go. Harwood's a solid pick. Connolly, I don't know anything about him, but I wanted to hit on New Zealand just because, you know, those are familiar names that you know, some of us recognize, especially Natsky. He raced down here a few years ago in the Supercross series. So New Zealand's probably in that 9 to 12 range, I want to say. I don't know if they're going to get any better than that just with this lineup. Natsky could mix it in for a top 10 in a moto at some point. Other than that, I don't know if they're going to be, you know, really fighting for a strong finish. But dumber things have happened, and I've been proven wrong in the past. Brazil, 46, 47, 48, Enzo Lopes, Bernardo Eto Tiburcio, and Fabio Apreciado dos Santos. And I wanted to hit on that just because it's the return of Enzo Lopes. We have not seen him in over a year. There was that whole snafu with the Club MX team going to Star Yamaha. Then it sounds like the same thing happened with them that he did to Star, but it sounds like Star's still giving him the chance. Different circumstances, but it sounds like, you know, he's going to be at Star and racing Supercross next year. That's the plan as far as, you know, my sources have been telling me. But I'm interested to see what Lopes does, and he's going to be on a 450. So he's going to be in that MXGP class with Tomac, with Jet, with Hurlings, with Geyser, with Prado. So I'm interested to see how he's going to do on a 450 in that one. Netherlands, 52, 53, 54, Jeffrey Hurlings, Kai de Wolfe, Glenn Koldenoff. This isn't the original team. Hurlings is going to go for a moto win. It's going to go for both moto wins. And oddly enough, the last few times, or two of the last few times at least, he's been going at moto wins against his own countrymate in Glenn Koldenoff. Koldenoff is the question mark here, only because he's on that Fantic. He hasn't had the greatest rides this year, but Glenn shows up for this race. It's like I was saying before with France, with Gautier Paulin all those years. Paulin showed up for that race. Koldenoff shows up for this race. And Kai de Wolfe, if everything goes right today and tomorrow, he's going to be your newly crowned MX2 world champion. So to see that battle between him, Webster, Cooper Webb, Vial, that's going to be a really good one to watch, as far as that MX2 class goes. And I'm interested to see how it goes. But that the Netherlands are going to be going at it with Hurlings and Koldenoff in that MXGP and MX Open classes. So that's going to be, they finished 18th last year due to some bad results, but Netherlands is going to be fighting for that Chamberlain Trophy this year. And when they mix it up with everybody else, the Australians, the Americans, the Spanish, it's going to be and the French, it's going to be a dogfight for that #1 position at the end of the weekend. Sweden, 55, 56, 57, Isaac Gifting, Arvid Lunning, and Alvin Osland. Solid team. They'll get into the A final. I probably have them in that 12 to 13 range on a good day. Gifting, he's been in the MXGP class, not the strongest results, with that talent group that they have in that MXGP class. Osland, I haven't seen him in a while, so I don't know exactly what he's been doing. And then Ardvig Luning, never heard of him before, but I still have Sweden on a good day in that 12 to 15 range. We'll jump all the way to Canada, 70, 71, 72, Jess Pettis, Kevin Benoit, Dylan Wright. Strong Canadian team this year. Jess Pettis, the MX1 Canadian National Champion, Kevin Benoit, the MX2 National Champion, and Dylan Wright. Wright missed a lot of the season with injury this year. It was a very nasty crash. He tried racing after it, and it just didn't work out for him. But this is a strong team from Canada. I really wish they would be able to just find a little bit of luck, find a little bit of magic, and get in that top 5 conversation. They've been at this for years. They know how to race this race. And it's just, they always have bad luck, but I really wish Canada would be able to figure this out and get a strong top 5 finish. And I think with this team, if everything goes well, they can do that. If everything goes well for everybody else, if everything plays out the way we expect it to, I expect Canada to be in that 7 to 9 range, 7-10 range probably. And maybe I'm overvaluating that or undervaluating them a little bit, but just based on past results, that's just where we are. And there's nothing personal against those guys, but I really hope that they actually make a strong run this year in the Motocross of Nations and get into that 5-6 conversation, maybe even higher if everything can go well. That's going to do it on this wrap up for the Motocross of Nations 2024 rider and country list. Like I said, there's some other countries that I didn't hit on, but I don't expect them to have real strong showings. But there's other guys from those countries that I didn't name that are going to, that could possibly be factored in. I speak of like Venezuela with Lorenzo Locurcio, Anthony Rodriguez. There's also the Dane, Kevin Horgmo. There's Camden McClellan and Mick O'Hara that are on the Triumphs. It'll be Triumph's first time in the Motocross of Nations this year. So it's gonna be exciting. I'm gonna be posting updates from Matterley Basin. I'll be over there for the first time ever on an international Motocross of Nations, and I cannot wait for it. Take off here in a few days. But thank you for watching, everyone, and I will be back with another video here in a few days with the rider lineup for the International 6 Days of Enduro in Spain. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.